This morning, America lost 4 warships, and nobody in Washington saw it coming. Not one destroyer, not two. 4 United States Navy warships with American sailors on board are sitting on the bottom of the Gulf of Oman right now. Iran fired 250 missiles in a single coordinated strike near Jask Island on the edge of the Strait of Hormuz. The missiles came in waves, low, fast, and in numbers specifically designed to overwhelm our defenses, and they worked. 4 ships went down. American sailors are dead. And President Trump has now ordered full military retaliation. Let that land for a moment. This is not a provocation. This is not a close call that diplomats can smooth over with a phone call. This is an act of war on a scale America has not experienced since Pearl Harbor. And just like Pearl Harbor, the question every serious person should be asking right now is not just what do we do next, but how on earth did we get here? Washington will not answer that question honestly, so I will. For 30 years, the United States has been playing a very dangerous game in the Persian Gulf. We parked destroyers and carrier groups in waters that Iran considers its front yard. We imposed sanctions so brutal they collapsed the Iranian economy and squeezed ordinary Iranian families into poverty. We conducted cyber attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities. The Stuxnet operation alone set their program back years. In January of 2020, we killed General Qasem Soleimani, a senior Iranian military commander, on Iraqi soil, without a declaration of war, without congressional approval, and without any serious plan for what came next. We armed Israel for repeated strikes on Iranian assets in Syria. We tore up the nuclear deal that was actually working. We threatened, sanctioned, isolated, and cornered Iran from every direction for 3 decades straight. And then Washington acts shocked when Iran finally hits back. I want to be precise here. What Iran did is an act of war. Sinking American warships and killing American sailors is not something I will defend or minimize, but I will tell you something that the news anchors on your television will never say out loud. We built this situation, not in weeks, not in months. Over 30 years of strategic decisions made not in the interest of the American people, but in the interest of defense contractors, foreign lobbies, and an ideological class of Washington insiders who have never worn a uniform and never paid any personal price for the wars they start. That is the truth, and it matters right now more than it has ever mattered before. Let me explain what actually happened at Jask, because the operational details here are important and the media will get them wrong. Jask is not some random stretch of Iranian coastline. It sits right at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz, the single most important maritime choke point on the planet. 40% of the world's seaborne oil passes through that strait every day. Iran has known for 20 years that if a war ever came, the Strait of Hormuz would be the battlefield that mattered most, so they built for it. Underground missile batteries cut into the mountains along the Makran coast. Hardened command bunkers, dispersed mobile launch platforms that are nearly impossible to locate from the air before they fire. Iran spent billions building a kill zone in those waters, and they have been rehearsing how to use it since at least 2006. The missiles they fired are not crude rockets. The Zulfiqar, the Qatar, the Noor, these are precision anti-ship cruise missiles, some of them flying less than 10 meters above the water surface to avoid radar detection. They come in from multiple directions simultaneously. They are specifically engineered to defeat the point defense systems on American surface warships. Our Aegis combat system is genuinely impressive technology. It can track and intercept incoming missiles with real effectiveness. But Aegis has limits. When you fire 250 missiles in coordinated salvos from multiple directions at once, you are not trying to get one through. You are trying to flood the system, overwhelm it with more simultaneous threats than it can physically process and engage. That is called saturation attack doctrine. Iran has been publicly discussing this strategy for over a decade. They published papers on it. Their military commanders gave speeches about it. It was not a secret. Washington chose not to take it seriously. 4 destroyers paid the price for that choice. Now Trump has ordered full retaliation. Carrier strike groups are moving into position. Long-range bombers are on alert. CENTCOM, United States Central Command, is running full war planning right now. The United States military is mobilizing for a strike on Iran, and the scale of what comes next will depend entirely on decisions being made in the next 48 to 72 hours. Here is what I need every American watching this to understand. Retaliation is not a strategy. Retaliation is an emotion dressed up as a plan. I understand why it is happening. American sailors are dead. American ships are sunk. No president can absorb that and do nothing. The political pressure alone makes some form of military response inevitable. I accept that reality, but there is a massive difference between a targeted, limited, calculated military response with clear objectives and a full-scale war of regime change against a country of 85 million people with one of the most capable missile arsenals in the world. Right now in Washington, there are people, and you know exactly who they are, who have been waiting their entire careers for this moment. The neoconservatives who wanted to hit Iran after Iraq. The think tank warriors who write op-eds about military solutions from the comfort of offices they never leave. The defense industry lobbyists who see a war with Iran and see contracts worth hundreds of billions of dollars. These people are in the situation room right now or on the phone with people who are, and they are pushing for the maximum option. They will tell the president that this is the moment to finish it, to take out Iran's nuclear program once and for all, to destroy the Revolutionary Guard, to collapse the regime and replace it with something friendlier. They will make it sound clean. They will make it sound fast. They will make it sound like Desert Storm, in and out, mission accomplished, home by Christmas. They are lying. Knowingly or not, they are lying. Iran is not Iraq in 2003. I cannot stress this enough. Iraq in 2003 was a broken country, 12 years of sanctions, a military that had been shattered in 1991 and never properly rebuilt, an air defense system we had been degrading with daily strikes for a decade, and deep sectarian divisions that fractured national resistance almost immediately. We still managed to turn that easy war into a 20-year catastrophe that cost over 4,000 American lives, hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives, several $1 trillion, and produced an Iraq that is today closer to Iran than it ever was under Saddam Hussein. That is the result of the last time Washington's best and brightest decided military force would solve a political problem in the Middle East. Iran is a completely different problem, 85 million people, a genuine national identity that dates back thousands of years, a Revolutionary Guard Corps that has been in active combat operations in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, advising Hezbollah in Lebanon for the better part of 15 years, a ballistic missile force that can reach Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, every American base in the region, and every carrier in the Gulf, underground nuclear facilities built specifically to survive American airstrikes, and proxy forces spread across 7 countries that can be activated simultaneously the moment American bombs start falling on Iranian soil. A war with Iran does not end in a week. It does not end in a month. It becomes a regional conflagration that pulls in every player: Israel, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, Shia militias in Iraq, potentially Russia and China watching carefully from the sidelines. It closes the Strait of Hormuz. It sends oil prices to levels that crash the American economy. It kills American soldiers, not just in the Gulf, but in Iraq and Syria, where Iranian proxies will immediately go on the offensive against every American position they can reach. This is what full retaliation actually means when you follow it to its logical conclusion. The men who built this situation, the generals, the think tankers, the politicians, the intelligence officials who told us for 30 years that the pressure was working, that the deterrence was holding, that Iran would blink, those men are not going to stand up tonight and say they were wrong. They never do. They will pivot to, we must respond with overwhelming force without skipping a single beat, without acknowledging for 1 second that their 30 years of policy is what put those sailors in harm's way. The perfumed princes of the Pentagon, the architects of failure, on your television screen tonight selling you the next war with the same confidence they sold you the last 3. 4 destroyers on the bottom of the Gulf of Oman is not the beginning of this story. It is the bill coming due on 3 decades of strategic malpractice, and now someone is asking America to pay even more. So the question is not whether America responds. The question is whether America survives the response it is about to make. Because right now, as carrier strike groups push toward the Gulf, and B-2s sit loaded on runways in Missouri. The decision that determines the next 20 years of American history is being made by the same people who have been wrong about everything in the Middle East for 30 consecutive years. And nobody, not one person in that situation room, is asking the question that actually matters. What happens on day 30? Not day one. Day one looks fine. American air power is the most lethal force ever assembled in human history. On day one, we hit Iran's missile batteries. We hit their naval bases. We hit their air defense systems. We hit their Revolutionary Guard command centers. The explosions will be spectacular. The news coverage will look like a video game. Retired generals on CNN will talk about precision and dominance and sending a message. The polls will show 70% American support for the strikes. Flags will go up on porches across the country. And then day 2 begins, and day 3, and day 30. Here is what happens when American bombs start falling on Iranian soil. And I want you to follow this sequence carefully because every single step of it is predictable. This is not speculation. This is operational logic that any serious military strategist can walk through in an afternoon. Within hours of the first American strike, Hezbollah, 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at Israel from southern Lebanon, goes on full offensive. Israel's Iron Dome is good. It is genuinely impressive. But 150,000 rockets fired in sustained waves over days and weeks will find gaps. Israeli cities take casualties. Israel responds with massive ground and air operations into Lebanon. Lebanon destabilizes. The entire northern front ignites. Simultaneously, Shia militias in Iraq, armed, trained, and directed by the same Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps we just bombed, begin attacking every American military installation in Iraq and Syria. We have approximately 2,500 troops in Syria and about 2,500 in Iraq right now. Those men and women are now in the middle of a shooting war on multiple fronts with no clear exit. The same Iraq that Washington spent 20 years and $2 trillion trying to stabilize is now a battlefield again. And this time the enemy is entrenched, motivated, and fighting on home soil. The Houthis in Yemen, who have already demonstrated the ability to strike targets with drones and missiles across the Arabian Peninsula, begin attacking Saudi oil infrastructure and UAE ports. Saudi Aramco facilities get hit. Gulf state oil production drops sharply. The world oil market goes into shock. The Strait of Hormuz closes. Iran does not need to win a naval battle to close that strait. They just need to make it too dangerous for commercial tankers to transit. A few mining operations, a few anti-ship missile launches at commercial vessels, and the insurance companies pull coverage overnight. 40% of the world's seaborne oil stops moving. Oil hits $150 a barrel within a week, $200 within a month. Every economy on earth feels it immediately. Inflation comes roaring back. The American economy, already carrying $36 trillion in national debt, takes a body blow it is not positioned to absorb. And Iran itself does not collapse. That is the critical miscalculation that Washington always makes. American bombs do not produce regime change in countries with genuine nationalist identity. We bombed North Vietnam for years. They did not quit. We bombed Serbia. Milosevic dug in. We bombed Iraq for weeks before the ground invasion. The regime held until boots were on the ground. And the ground invasion of Iran is not something any serious military planner will put on paper with a straight face. Tehran alone has a population of 15 million people. The terrain between the Gulf Coast and the Iranian interior is some of the most difficult ground on earth for mechanized offensive operations. We do not have the ground forces. We do not have the logistics. We do not have the political will to sustain the casualties that a ground campaign against Iran would produce. So we bomb and bomb and bomb. And Iran absorbs it, disperses, goes underground, and keeps fighting. Because that is exactly what they built their entire military doctrine to do. Now add one more layer to this, because the Gulf of Oman is not just American territory. China gets roughly 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Japan and South Korea are almost entirely dependent on Gulf oil. India has massive economic exposure to regional stability. Russia, which has been building a strategic partnership with Iran for years, is watching every move we make and drawing conclusions about how far American escalation will go. Beijing is not going to send troops to fight alongside Iran. They are too smart for that. but they do not need to fire a single bullet to make America's strategic position dramatically worse. All China has to do is accelerate its support to Iran, parts, components, financial workarounds to bypass sanctions, diplomatic cover in the United Nations Security Council, and increase pressure on Taiwan simultaneously. Washington cannot fight a full-scale war with Iran and manage a Taiwan crisis at the same time. Our military is not sized for it. Our industrial base is not capable of sustaining it. The ammunition stockpiles that were already depleted by Ukraine are not magically replenished because we need them somewhere else. This is the strategic trap. And Iran, or more precisely, the alliance between Iran, Russia, and China, understands it perfectly. They have been studying American strategic overextension for 20 years. They know our pressure points better than most people sitting in the Pentagon do. So what should America actually do right now? Because I am not going to sit here and tell you that doing nothing is an option. It is not. 4 destroyers went down. American sailors are dead. There must be a response, a real one, a hard one that restores deterrence and makes absolutely clear to Tehran that this level of escalation carries consequences. But there is a fundamental difference between a response and a war. A targeted, calibrated strike on the specific missile batteries and launch facilities responsible for the attack on our destroyers, that is a response. It is proportionate. It is defensible. It sends a clear and unambiguous message without triggering the full regional explosion I just described. You hit the weapon systems that sank our ships. You demonstrate that American power can reach any target in Iran with precision and without warning. And then, and this is the part Washington will hate, you get on the phone and you talk. Not because Iran deserves a phone call, not because the mullahs in Tehran are good actors, but because every war in history that did not end in the total annihilation of one side ended at a negotiating table. The only question is how many people die before both sides sit down. Smart strategy minimizes that number. Ideology and pride maximize it. Trump, and I will give him credit where it is due, has shown in his first term that he is capable of pulling back from the brink when the military option stops making strategic sense. He ordered strikes on Iran in 2019 and pulled them back with 10 minutes to spare when the casualty estimates came in. That instinct, that cold calculation of cost versus benefit, is exactly what the moment requires right now. Not the advice of generals who want to put their names on a big operation. Not the urging of neoconservatives who have wanted this war since 2003. The same cold calculus that asked, what does this actually get us? Here is the verdict. And I want you to hear this clearly. America did not lose 4 destroyers because Iran is uniquely evil. America lost 4 destroyers because a foreign policy built on arrogance, ideology, and the interests of people who never fight the wars they start finally produced the catastrophe it was always going to produce. The bill that has been accumulating for 30 years just came due in American lives and American ships on the floor of the Gulf of Oman. Full-scale war with Iran does not avenge those sailors. It joins them with tens of thousands more. It does not make America stronger. It bleeds America dry across every dimension, military, economic, political, strategic, while China watches and waits and grows stronger by the day. The hard truth, the truth that Washington is constitutionally incapable of accepting, is that American security in the 21st century does not depend on controlling the Persian Gulf, garrisoning the Middle East, and projecting force into every corner of the world. It depends on a strong border, a rebuilt industrial base, a military designed for the threats of this century rather than the last one, and a foreign policy that asks one simple question before committing American blood and treasure anywhere on earth. What is the national interest of the United States of America? Not Israel's interest, not Saudi Arabia's interest, not Raytheon's interest, not the interest of think tank fellows and television generals who have been wrong about everything for 30 years. America's interest. 4 destroyers are on the bottom of the Gulf of Oman. The next decision determines whether that is where this ends or where it begins. Choose carefully. Because history does not give second chances to empires that overreach.